All right, party people, it's your girl here, Clarity Speaks, popping into your timeline with another stream of my consciousness and another episode of A Reasonable Black Woman Reacts. And today I am reacting to Candace Owens. I have decided to weigh in and give my hot take on what I have observed over the past 6 weeks as I've watched her backpedal, booty pop, and pivot as CSI Nancy Drew Gossip Girl. This is what she's turned into. Long story short, my assessment, I can be wrong, but my assessment thus far, after watching her these past 6 weeks, juxtaposed of what I've seen of her over the past 10 years, or her evolution and so on and so forth, I have come to the conclusion that Candace Owens is on track to be the wealthiest Black political grifter ever in America. I've come to the conclusion that she's actually a grifter. And y'all try to tell me. Y'all tried to tell me. I didn't believe you initially. I did. I was rocking with Candace. I was a fan. She had me fooled. But now her behavior, her movements, she's given agent of chaos. She's given paid agitator. At worst, at best, she's given useful idiot to the political manipulators who have infiltrated this country to divide Americans, of which she is right now a very choice tool as she is, doing her handiwork on the MAGA movement and Turning Point USA. That's why it's really giving, agent of chaos, paid agitator. Somebody cue Umar Johnson. Isn't that suspicious? It's looking quite suspicious. But yeah, so in observing these things, I've come up with a few important questions that I think we the people want to know. And that first question is, when are you making your husband a sandwich? When do you have time to make your husband a sandwich? You wrote a whole book about it. I thought that was important to you, but you are instead spending, again, 24/7 talking about another woman's husband. That's suspicious. I don't know. When was the last time you made your husband a sandwich? Or was that a grift? Because again, you're an excellent, superb, superior, top tier content creator who knows how to read the room. You're very articulate. You know how to gather and synthesize a whole bunch of information and communicate it in a way that is compelling and drawing a crowd. So did you pick up on the fact that the red pill community was revolting against feminism, and those talking points align with a lot of conservative talking points that your audience resonate with, and you decided to just go on and write you a book like you did, when you first came out, capitalizing off of your newfound conservative audience? In other words, you hit a lick. And you're hitting a lot of licks, right? Because unfortunately, we could not, I guess you can say it's a good or a bad thing when conservatives, find somebody that's speaking our language, we get behind you, baby. And because you are attractive, you are articulate, you are compelling, you give a bold, fearless persona. They was like, let's get this girl on the payroll. We can utilize her because, they thought that you were authentic and sincere, but it's giving you're not. So in like manner, I'm surmising that you perhaps did the same thing with that book. Somebody cue 50 cents, I get money, because that's what it's giving. You're giving, I get money. And you got money. And now we're on to the next. Which brings me to my next point, since we're talking about family. Where's the concern for your children and their safety and your husband's safety and your extended family safety, with you out here talking all reckless and greasy about heads of state, slandering all willy-nilly, throwing out accusations and things. And again, this is causing me to suspect the fact that no one has tried to blow your head off, literally. Forget the threats. Everybody's making threats, and we need to see the receipts of the threats, right? Because anybody can say that they're being threatened. But the people that were really in danger actually got bullets. They had to face bullets. So either you are an agent of chaos, a paid agitator who's comfortable being so bold saying all of these things. Or again, you're this useful idiot. But something is very suspicious about you're not being concerned about your family as a mother who wrote a whole book about making sandwiches for her husband. Why are you not concerned? I would be so concerned. I'm single and I'm concerned about my little political opinions and how they would affect my extended family members and why I rarely post. I don't post my family members or friends like that. Because and I'm nowhere near where you are. I'm not even speaking opinions like you're speaking them. But the people who are really in danger out here was Charlie Kirk, President Trump, the J6ers who got locked up under the lawfare of the past administration for nothing. Let's talk about Beverly Beatty, who was locked up and separated from her children. Those people were really experiencing some danger for saying things that were demonstratively true. They weren't conspiracy. These people were just exercising their First Amendment right, which of course you do have the right as well. But the things that you're saying are very dangerous to be saying. So you mean to tell me you're willing to do that and put your family safety and your children's safety on the line? Like, do you ever take them out to the park? Can you ever take them out to the park for ice cream or anything like that? Or are they on board? Again, because we getting money. You're a cash cow. I don't know. I'm just asking. These are the questions that come to my mind as I'm watching your behavior. The next question that comes to my mind as you are, doing this cosplay of CSI Nancy Drew Gossip Girl is the reason that you're really on this Charlie Kirk so hard. It was convenient for you, it seemed to me, because you were just on the Brigitte Macron is a man conspiracy or investigation. And then when they clapped back and brought some lawsuits against you, you backpedaled and booty popped right on off of that, and you pivoted right on over to being Charlie's angel. Okay? Decided to be a Charlie's angel for Charlie's murder, which I don't believe that you're sincere at, just by virtue of the disrespect that you're showing to his family and his legacy. It can't be real. There's something there. And again, we need Dr. Umar because it's suspicious. The way in which you're coming at him is very suspicious. There's two things can be true at the same time, which is there are some questionable things about Charlie Kirk's murder. But the length to which you have gone and the conclusion that you are drawing is giving, again, paid agitator, agent of chaos, or a simple, useful idiot who has hit a lick and is just a narcissist and full of greed and full of yourself. And you're drunk on all of this attention because you hit a lick way back in 2017 when you aligned yourself with the conservatives. And let me tell you how this is reminiscent of people in Christianity who spent years being a Christian, and all of a sudden they just, deconstruct their faith and they just, start making porn or start becoming a Marxist or something, after they spent years being a Christian. Is giving they were never a Christian in the first place, and that they were literally more socialized into the gospel, right? Meaning they found a sense of community, meaning basically they hit a lick. They hit a what's the word? A relational lick, right? That was their payment. The socializing, the sense of belonging, in some instances, income, all of that until it no longer served them, until they no longer got the feels that they once got. And now they're on to the next. And that's what it's giving. It's giving like you were socialized into conservatism because you were young, you were impressionable, you were, bold, and you were, again, articulate. You had all the goods, right? And you began to adopt the ideas of this conservative community because they're really good ideas. So it's easy to do that. In the same way with Christianity, it's easy to, fall in love with that community and a lot of the principles and the teachings, right? So here you are, you're meeting all of the top conservatives. You're starting something with Charlie Kirk. You become his sidekick. You're meeting Dennis Prager, Larry Elder. They're becoming your mentors. They're helping you write your books, giving you ideas and bringing you up to speed on all of the things that, I don't know, I guess, and I hope you know something about communism, but you're getting up to speed on all of the history of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party and all of those things. So you're coming up to speed on these things. And so now you learn something new and you're walking around like this is your knowledge. Like they didn't just download into you. And again, because you synthesize information well, you're a great communicator, you understand technology, you understand social media and how to use it, you hit a lick. That's what it's given. You hit a lick. So yeah. So I feel as though you pivoted over to Charlie Kirk because the Macrons were on you, and they were ready to bankrupt you. They were ready to bankrupt you, if that could be had. Because I hear your husband is super wealthy. I don't know, but that would have been a problem, as evidenced by how quickly you backpedaled and booty pop off of that and jumped quickly on this Charlie Kirk investigation. That's my suspicion. Yeah, because your credibility also was starting to crash and burn with the Brigitte Macron thing as well. Now, on to my final observation. I really wish that you use all of this energy, all of this investigative skill to tell your audience why Christ is king. Okay? Instead of saying Christ is king, tell us why he is king. Better yet, tell us that Jesus is Lord, because anybody can say Christ is king. Okay? Anybody can say that. You just echoing your homie Kanye saying Christ is king, and we see how that turned out for him, his Christian walk. Okay, Jesus didn't pick up on the main line for him, and so he pretty much decided to walk away from Jesus and return to his vomit. But that's your boy. You love to name drop him. So y'all are out here talking about Christ is king, but I want you to tell me why Jesus is Lord, right? Yeshua HaMashiach, if you will, for the Jews. For the Jews out there. Because again, anybody can say Christ is king. Tell us why he is king. Why don't you do an investigation on that? Be Lee Strobel. Give me a little C.S. Lewis or something, right? You use that energy to inform your audience why Jesus is Lord and why he is the answer, right? Well, why don't you pick up where Charlie Kirk left off, since he is such your brother, and you're so concerned about his legacy, but you're not, because you're destroying his legacy, and it is suspicious. So I don't believe Candace anymore, guys. That's just really my assessment. My assessment of Candace is I don't believe that she is sincere. I now really believe that she's a narcissist and that she hit a lick. And I think she might even be, what's the word? She's a tool of the powers of darkness, just the way that she's moving. And to me, it is also suspicious why Charlie Kirk's wife is allowing her to speak on her husband like this. There cannot be enough grieving for me to not stand up for the honor of my husband when someone like her is, defaming it and disrespecting it. I don't understand that. I'm gonna have to come up out of my grief for a minute and tell her to be quiet. I hope that there is a lawsuit. Maybe she's working behind the scene. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, but it is very suspicious why she is allowing this woman to speak on her husband like this. So yeah, guys, that's my 2 cents. That's my hot take on it. Number one, when is Candace going to make her husband a sandwich is my question. Number two, where's the concern for the safety of her children with her talking so reckless and so greasy? Number three, the reason that she pivoted over to become, again, CSI, Nancy Drew Gossip Girl, for Charlie Kirk to become a Charlie's Angel investigative reporter for Charlie's honor, is because she crashed and burned on that Macron story, and they were coming for her and trying to come for her back, right? Trying to, she was in danger of them siphoning some money from her. So she backpedaled and booty popped off of that. Not to mention, as my girl April Chapman, shout out to her, Unshakable with April Chapman, she did a great breakdown of how this is about money. Okay, again, Q 50 cents, I get money. Go see my post on my Instagram where I really I wrote most of what I'm saying now. I wrote it on a post because this is when it first came to me a few weeks back, and then I was like, I really want to do a video and just kind of codify it, if you will, because some people ain't gonna read, okay? And I write better than I speak, so I do more writing than speaking. But in any case, yeah, it's trekking with I Get Money. All right, if you look at the breakdown that April Chapman did of her. So yeah, and then finally, I want her to tell me why Jesus is Lord. I want her to tell me why Christ is King. Okay, tell me why Christ is King, Candace. Since you out here, echoing Kanye. Yeah. So I'm no longer believing anything about her has been real. Again, from her book to yes, she's just scripted, and she has hit a heck of a lick. Bravo, my friend. Get your money. Deuces. All right, guys. So I recorded that and I loaded it here on StreamYard. And I did want to add a little bit more of insight on the comparison I was making between how Christians are socialized into the gospel, and it turns more into like a false conversion. It amounts to being a false conversion when they end up deconstructing their faith. And the idea of being socialized into something means if I come to a group of people and I have certain emotional deficits, or I'm looking for something, if I'm not a plant, right? If I'm not a plant and trying to infiltrate that organization, many people come to organizations as just out of some sort of emotional deficit or out of some sort of need. And so when you think about certain people coming to Christ, like, for example, some of the people that have deconstructed their faith, if you lift the hood and kick the tires, you probably could sit in a therapy session with them, you probably will discover that there were some emotional deficits that made them vulnerable and made the Christian church and the community attractive to them, especially if they had any sort of gifting. Because again, we as Christians and we as conservatives and people in general who are part of any community, if someone new wants to join our community, we welcome them with open arms. We roll out the red carpet. We are, giving them the things that more than likely they're missing from an emotional standpoint. So if you have giftings, we want to, train you and groom you and disciple you and, put you on stages, maybe, you leading the Bible study, if you got teaching gifts, now you're a minister, you know what I mean? And you get it, all of this validation, all of this praise. In many instances from there, particularly if you come from, urban poverty. I see this a lot with Christian hip hop figures who came from like some sort of urban poverty or whatever, and weren't able to really hold a job down in the real world. But now they're in the Christian community. They have, found ways to make income, steady income, good income. And then they get elevated, and then when things begin to challenge their other parts of their worldview that is not in alignment with the Bible, they'll either try to contort it, contort the scriptures to fit it, or they ignore that part of the scripture, or they get so agitated by it that they become disillusioned and they deconstruct. And then next thing you know, they completely abandon the faith, and now they're bad mouthing the faith. And I've seen that again with Christian hip hop figures, particularly around this issue with George Floyd, for example. That event seemed to have thrown a lot of Christians, urban hip hop, Christian hip hop artists, thrown them for a loop, and they, deconstruct. Not well, many of them deconstruct, but they start to really question the church and their white brethren who spent a lot of money supporting them. A lot of them were artists who got supported by many Christians, and in a similar way, we see Candace, who was supported by conservatives, that she's now, totally disrespecting and turning her back on them. It's a difference in having disagreements with your group. We saw Charlie was in the midst of that, but she's trying to characterize the disagreements Charlie was having in-house about his, stance on Israel, as he was trying to mediate and help them communicate better to the youth. She's trying to characterize that as he was having some crisis, that he was ready to just abandon his base or something, or abandon the conservative movement. That was not it. He was having a respectful disagreement, which is different from what she's having. You know what I mean? She's taken her grievance, and she's now just willy-nilly throwing all kinds of slanderous accusations that is not consistent with someone who ever respected the people who lifted her up, who gave her a platform. It's like there's no mention of Thanksgiving or gratitude for any of those things. And so I that's why I was drawing that parallel, because I see that similarity. But in Candace's case, whereas I think many Christian hip hoppers were just misinformed, ill-informed, just ignorant, and moving, just like slaves to the social vanity of political correctness, slaves to race affinity and things like that. Those things drove them to having poor conclusions about their Christian community, in their critiquing their Christian community, because they did similar in terms of making accusations that because the white Christians did not buy the George Floyd propaganda, therefore they're racist, they're white supremacists, they're Christian nationalists, and they're throwing all these terms around, which are, in my estimation, slanderous to the people that are responsible for many of them having a platform, that are responsible for many of them probably now being millionaires, multimillionaires, if not very well off from where they started, And so the same applies for Candace. So that's where I was coming from with that. And then I also wanted to further clarify what April Chapman brought to the table when I'm talking about getting money, that this is really about, at the root of it is just about Candace's ego, her greed, the narcissism, her thinking more highly of herself than she ought to think. April did a piece on going and looking at the YouTube analytics, and when Candace's channel crashed and burned after she left Daily Wire, and then the sorts of content that she was doing that started to increase her views. And so April does that timeline showing, looking at her analytics, because people's analytics are public knowledge. So check out April Chapman's Unshakable, her Candace Owens takes. And shout out also to Jay Witt. He has been on Candace's neck. He does a video on her every day, child. I just wanted to do this one video to bring this to light, because again, in my estimation, Candace has hit a lick. And it's just that simple for me. I don't even have the time or the bandwidth to want to further psychoanalyze her. She has just clearly hit a lick. That is what Candace has done. So, yeah, guys. So I'm out of here. Thank you for listening.